Aisha was only 18 when her life was turned upside down. She had lost both her parents years ago, and since then, she had been living under the roof of her father's second wife, the woman she was forced to call stepmother. Her stepmother, Madam Saad, never hid her dislike for Aisha. She treated her like a servant, making her scrub floors, fetch water, and cook for the entire household. Any mistake, no matter how small, earned her sharp words or even a slap. But nothing could have prepared Aisha for what was about to happen. Before we go on, please I would like to ask you to kindly show some support to the channel by subscribing, liking the video if you enjoy it and dropping a nice comment. God bless you as you do so. It was a dusty afternoon in the small town of Igbo. The sun burned hot overhead. Aisha was in the backyard washing clothes when she overheard voices in the sitting room. She paused, hands dripping with soapy water, and listened. Madam Saada's voice was sharp. So will you take her or not? A deep male voice replied, I told you, I don't have much money. Times are hard. You'll get her for cheap, Madam Saad insisted. Just take her away from here. Feed her, use her for whatever you like. I'm tired of feeding someone who does nothing for me. Aisha's heart pounded in her chest. Was she being sold? The man hesitated. All right, he said finally. But I can only give you 40,000 naira. Fine, Madam Saad snapped. When will you come for her? Tomorrow morning. Early. Aisha's hands trembled. 40,000 naira, that was all she was worth to her stepmother. Less than the cost of the new generator Madam Saad had just bought. That night, Aisha couldn't sleep. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. The thought of being handed over to a strange man made her stomach turn. Who was he? Why did he want her? She thought of running away, but she had no relatives left, no money, nowhere to go. The only thing she knew for certain was that tomorrow, her life would change forever, and not for the better. The next morning came too quickly. Before the sun was even fully up, Madam Saad barged into Aisha's small room. Get up, she barked. Pack your things. Aisha sat up slowly, her heart heavy. Where am I going? You'll find out soon enough. Just do as I say. She didn't argue. She folded her 2 faded dresses and a wrapper into a nylon bag. Her stepmother watched, arms folded, an impatient scowl on her face. A knock came at the front door. Madam Saad went to open it, revealing the man from yesterday, the one with the deep voice. He was tall but looked worn out, his shirt frayed at the collar. His name, she would soon learn, was Malam Musa. He carried himself with the tired air of someone who had seen too many hard years. She's ready, Madam Saad said coldly, jerking her head toward Aisha. Pay me. Malam Musa pulled out a bundle of cash, counted 40,000 naira into her hand, and without another word, motioned for Aisha to follow him. No goodbyes. No blessings. Not even a glance back. Aisha stepped out of the only home she had known since her parents' death, her bare feet scraping against the rough ground. Malam Musa led her to an old dusty motorcycle parked outside. Get on, he said simply. She climbed on behind him, clutching her small nylon bag tightly. As the motorcycle rattled down the dirt road, Aisha kept her eyes on the horizon, watching her old life fade behind her. After almost an hour, they reached a small crumbling house at the edge of a village. Chickens pecked in the dirt, and a torn curtain hung in the doorway. This was Malam Musa's home. Inside, there was little more than a wooden bed, a broken table, and a cooking pot blackened from years of use. This is where you'll stay, he said. You'll cook, fetch water, keep the place clean. And you'll be my wife now. Aisha's stomach turned. Wife? She wanted to speak, to protest, but the words caught in her throat. Her stepmother had truly sold her, not just into servitude, but into a life she had never agreed to. The first days in Malam Musa's house were the hardest Aisha had ever known. There was no electricity, only a smoky kerosene lamp at night. The well was almost half a kilometer away, and she had to carry heavy buckets of water twice a day. Malam Musa spoke little. He ate in silence, often leaving her alone in the small house while he went out to work odd jobs in the village. One afternoon, she ventured outside to sweep the compound. An old woman passing by stopped to stare. Are you Malam Musa's new wife? The woman asked. Aisha hesitated before nodding. The woman clucked her tongue. You're young. Too young. Be careful. She walked away, muttering under her breath. The warning settled heavily in Aisha's mind. She didn't know what dangers the old woman meant, but she could feel them in the air, unspoken, waiting. At night, Aisha would lie awake listening to the sound of crickets and the wind whistling through the cracks in the wall. She thought of her parents, the way her father used to call her my sunshine, and how her mother would hum while cooking. Tears would sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Crying wouldn't bring them back. One morning, as she was washing clothes by the well, a boy around her age approached. He carried a bag of groundnuts and offered her some. "You're new here," he said shyly. "My name is Sonny." She thanked him but didn't take the groundnuts. Trusting strangers wasn't safe. Still, she couldn't help but notice his kind eyes. For the first time since arriving, she felt a flicker of something, maybe not hope yet, but the faint sense that not everyone in this village meant her harm. Days turned into weeks. Aisha learned the rhythms of life in Malam Musa's small, crumbling home. He would leave at dawn, sometimes returning at midday, sometimes late into the night. He spoke little about where he went or what he did. Most days he seemed tired, shoulders slumped, eyes clouded, but there were also moments when his voice would rise sharply, especially if she made a mistake. One evening, as she served him tuwo and okra soup, she dared to ask, Why did you take me for my stepmother?" He looked at her for a long time before replying. "I needed someone to help me." And he trailed off, then added quietly, "It's lonely here." Aisha didn't know whether to feel pity or resentment. She had been sold like property, yet the man in front of her was not the cruel monster she'd imagined, just a poor, weary man trying to survive in a harsh world. Still, there was an unspoken boundary between them. She slept on a mat in the corner of the room, and though he called her his wife, he never tried to force himself on her. Instead, he taught her small things: how to repair the fishing net, how to light the kerosene stove without wasting fuel, how to haggle with traders in the market. "Life here is hard," he told her one night. "But if you learn how to live it, you'll never go hungry." Yet, for all his lessons, Aisha's heart was restless. She didn't belong here, not truly. Every time she went to the well, she would glance toward the road that led out of the village, wondering if there was still a way to escape. But then she would remember, no money, no family, nowhere to run. The only choice she had was to endure, and hope that somewhere down the line, life might give her another chance. By the second month, Aisha had learned the names of most people in the village. She also learned that gossip traveled faster than the harmattan wind. Every time she went to fetch water, she could feel eyes on her, women at the well whispering, children pointing. "That's the girl Malam Musa bought," someone would murmur. 18, they say. Barely a woman. She must have done something terrible for her family to sell her. The word stung, even though she kept her head down and pretended not to hear. Sonny remained her only friendly face in the village. Sometimes, he would help her carry the heavy buckets back from the well. Other times, he would walk with her to the market, telling her funny stories about the people there. One day, as they walked, Sonny said quietly, "People talk too much. Don't let it get to you." Aisha smiled faintly. "It's hard not to." He glanced at her, then away. "If you ever need help, you can come to me." She didn't reply, but deep inside, she was grateful. That night, as she cooked beans in the small pot, Malam Musa returned home earlier than usual. His eyes narrowed when he saw her smiling to herself. "Who were you talking to at the market today?" he asked sharply. "No one," she said quickly. "Just Sonny. He helped me carry the water." Musa's jaw tightened. "You should be careful who you spend time with. People will start saying things." Aisha lowered her gaze. She wasn't sure if his warning came from jealousy or from genuine concern, but either way, she knew the walls around her life were closing in tighter. It happened on a Saturday morning. Aisha was returning from the well when she saw a small crowd gathered near the market square. Curious, she moved closer and realized that a child had fallen and injured his leg badly. The boy was crying, his mother frantic. Without thinking, Aisha dropped her water buckets and rushed forward. She tore a strip from her wrapper, cleaned the wound as best she could, and tied it tightly to stop the bleeding. "Quick," she told the mother, "carry him to the health post. I'll help you." Together, they brought the boy to the small clinic, where the nurse took over. By the time Aisha returned to the market, word had already spread. People who used to whisper behind her back now looked at her differently. "That's the girl who helped Tun's son," one woman said. "She was quick thinking," another added. "Maybe she's not as bad as we thought." The shift was small, but Aisha felt it. For the first time since coming to the village, she wasn't only the girl Malam Musa bought, she was someone who had done something good. That evening, Malam Musa said nothing about it. But as they sat eating together, she noticed the way he watched her, not with suspicion, but with a quiet, almost reluctant respect. "You did well today," he said finally. It was only 4 words, but to Aisha, they felt like a doorway, the first crack of light in the darkness she had been living in. After the incident at the market, Aisha noticed subtle changes in her daily life. When she went to fetch water, the other women no longer turned their backs on her. Some even greeted her. At the market, the yam seller gave her a small discount without being asked. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make her feel like maybe she belonged here, even if just a little. Sonny became more protective of her. He would appear without warning, offering to walk her home if she stayed too long in the market. Once, when a group of young men made a crude joke as she passed, Sonny stepped forward and told them to show respect. "You shouldn't fight for me," she told him afterward. "I'm not fighting," he replied. "I'm just making sure people know your name isn't one they can throw around carelessly." Malam Musa, too, seemed to soften, though his pride would never let him say it outright. He began bringing her small things from the market, a piece of dried fish, a new wooden spoon, once even a scarf in her favorite shade of blue. "You don't have to," she said when he handed it to her. "It gets cold at night," was all he replied. But with these changes came a new kind of tension. Aisha could feel it in the way Musa's eyes followed her whenever Sonny was nearby. She could hear it in the edge of his voice when he asked what she had done that day. The ground beneath her feet was shifting, and she didn't know if it would steady her, or swallow her whole. It was late in the afternoon when a stranger arrived at Malam Musa's house. Aisha was sweeping the front yard when she saw the tall man approaching, his eyes scanning her up and down before he spoke. "You're Aisha, aren't you?" She nodded cautiously. "I came from your hometown," he said. "I know your stepmother." Her grip tightened on the broom handle. "What do you want?" The man hesitated, then said, "She told people you ran away. Said you were ungrateful, that you refused to work, so she sent you off." Aisha's mouth went dry. "She sold me," she said bitterly. The man looked uncomfortable. "Yes, for far less than what people thought. She said she needed the money, but most of it went to pay off a debt from gambling." That evening, Aisha sat outside the house, staring at the fading sky. She felt anger, but also a hollow kind of sadness. She had known her stepmother didn't love her, but to hear the truth from a stranger made the wound feel fresh again. When Musa returned home, she didn't greet him as usual. He noticed. "What's wrong?" She turned to him sharply. "Why did you buy me?" He froze. "Aisha. Was it just for work? For company? Or something else?" He sighed heavily. "Your stepmother. She made it sound like you had nowhere else to go. And yes, I thought you could help me here. But I never wanted to hurt you." His words weren't enough to ease the storm inside her. That night, she lay awake, wondering if she had simply been passed from one selfish hand to another. If there was one thing she knew for certain, it was this: she had to start taking control of her own life, no matter whose roof she slept under. The rains came early that year. Heavy, pounding storms that turned the village paths into rivers of mud. One night, after hours of relentless downpour, a loud banging woke Aisha from sleep. Malam Musa opened the door to find Sonny standing there, drenched to the skin. "The river is flooding," he said urgently. "A family's house is collapsing, they need help." Without a word, Musa grabbed a lantern, and Aisha followed them out into the storm. When they reached the far end of the village, the scene was chaos. A small mud house had partially caved in, trapping a woman and her 2 children inside. Villagers struggled to shift the heavy debris, their shouts barely audible over the roar of the rain. Aisha didn't hesitate. She waded through the water, using her bare hands to dig at the wet earth. Sonny worked beside her, and Musa joined in moments later. After what felt like hours, they pulled the family out, wet, shivering but alive. The mother collapsed into Aisha's arms, sobbing her thanks. By morning, everyone in the village knew what had happened. She's brave, the elders said. Not many would risk themselves in that rain. For the second time, Aisha's place in the community shifted. She was no longer just the girl Musa bought, she was becoming someone respected, someone people listened to. That evening, as they sat drying their clothes by the fire, Musa said quietly, "You're stronger than you think." Aisha didn't answer, but inside, something was beginning to change. For the first time in a long while, she felt that strength too. In the days after the flood, Aisha noticed more people stopping to speak to her. Women invited her to sit with them at the well, men greeted her respectfully in the market, and even the village chief's wife asked her to help organize a community meal. It should have felt like a victory, but inside the walls of Musa's small house, the air was growing tense. Musa began returning home later than usual. When he was around, his questions about her day were sharper, his silences heavier. One evening, as she prepared yam porridge, he finally said, "I don't like how much you're talking to Sonny." Aisha set the spoon down. "He's a friend. He's been kind to me." "Kindness isn't always pure," Musa replied flatly. She met his gaze. "And buying a girl from her stepmother is?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Musa's jaw tightened, and he turned away without replying. The next day at the well, Sonny warned her quietly, "Be careful. Some people are saying Musa feels threatened, that he's afraid you'll leave." Aisha almost laughed. "Leave? Where would I go?" But the truth was, she had started to imagine it, a life beyond these mud walls, beyond this village. The idea was like a small flame, faint but growing. It was a hot, dusty afternoon when Aisha saw a shadow approach the compound. A man in a faded brown kaftan stood at the gate, his eyes scanning the yard before they settled on her. "Are you Aisha?" he asked. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "I bring news from your hometown." Her stomach tightened. "From who?" "From someone who claims to have known your parents." She led him to the shade of the mango tree, offering him water from a calabash. The man drank, then leaned forward. "Your father had land, small but fertile. After his death, your stepmother claimed it as her own. But it wasn't hers to take. There's a dispute now, and the elders sent me to find you. If you come back, you might be able to reclaim it." The words hit her like a hammer. Land. Something of her own. Musa returned home that evening to find her deep in thought. When she told him about the visitor, his face darkened. "And what will you do if you go back?" he asked. "Who will protect you there? You think your stepmother will let you live in peace?" "I don't know," Aisha admitted. "But it's my land. My father's land. I have a right to it." Musa was silent for a long time, then muttered, "Sometimes rights aren't worth the trouble they bring." That night, Aisha lay awake again, the man's words replaying in her mind. For the first time, she felt she might have a way out, a chance at something better than being the girl who was sold. But leaving wouldn't be simple. And she had no idea how far Musa would go to keep her there. For days, Aisha carried the decision in her chest like a stone. She went about her chores, fetched water, cooked Musa's meals, but her mind was far away, picturing the land her father once owned. At the well, she asked the older women what they thought. "Land is life," one said. "It will give you independence," another agreed. But a third warned, "Be careful. Men don't like to lose what they think they own." One evening, she told Sonny about the visitor's news. "You should go," he said firmly. "This is your chance." "And Musa?" she asked quietly. Sonny hesitated. "If he truly cares for you, he'll let you go. If not," his voice trailed off, but the meaning was clear. That night, Aisha finally spoke to Musa. She waited until they had finished eating, then set her spoon down. "I want to go back. To see the land. To speak with the elders." Musa's head lifted slowly. His eyes were unreadable. "And if you go back, will you return here?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But I need to see it for myself." His jaw tightened. "You're not going anywhere." The firmness in his voice chilled her, but something inside her had shifted. For the first time, she realized that whether Musa allowed it or not, she would find a way to go. And when she did, there would be no coming back. Aisha didn't speak of the land again, but inside, her decision was made. She began setting aside small portions of the food she cooked, hiding them in a calabash under the bed. She saved tiny coins from the market change, tucking them inside the hem of her wrapper. It wasn't much, but she knew she'd need something if she was going to make the journey back to her hometown. Sonny noticed her restlessness. One afternoon, as they walked from the well, he said quietly, "When you're ready, tell me. I'll help you get to the road." She looked at him in surprise. "Why are you helping me?" He smiled faintly. "Because I don't think you were meant to live your whole life in someone else's shadow." Meanwhile, Musa had begun to watch her more closely. He would ask unexpected questions. "Where did you go today? Who were you speaking to?" And linger in the doorway when she fetched water from the yard. One evening, she returned from the well to find him sitting on the bench outside, his face dark. "I saw you talking to Sonny again," he said. "He's my friend," she replied calmly. "He's a distraction," Musa shot back. "And I think you're forgetting that you belong here." The word belong made something in her snap. She didn't reply, she simply went inside and closed the door. That night, as she lay on her mat, she realized there was no more time to waste. She had to leave soon, before Musa's suspicions became something worse. The night she chose to leave, the moon was thin and pale, barely lighting the yard. She waited until Musa's breathing was deep and steady, then rose quietly from her mat. Her small bundle of food and coins was already tied, hidden beneath her wrapper. She slipped on her sandals and crept toward the door. Every creak of the floor seemed to echo. Outside, the air was cool and still. She moved quickly past the mango tree and through the narrow path that led toward the village edge. Sonny was waiting under the tall neem tree, his figure just a shadow in the dark. "You're sure?" he whispered. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. They began walking fast, their footsteps crunching softly on the dirt. The road to the main highway was still far, but Aisha's heart was already racing with the thought of freedom. Then, a sharp voice cut through the night. "Aisha." She froze. Musa stood a few paces away, a lantern in his hand, the light casting harsh shadows across his face. "What are you doing?" His voice was low, dangerous. Sonny stepped forward. "She's leaving. Let her go." Musa's eyes burned. "She's not going anywhere." The three of them stood in tense silence, the sound of crickets loud in the night air. Aisha realized this was the moment that would decide everything, whether she would walk away or be dragged back into the life she no longer wanted.